Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Lion's Den. This is the Weekly Roar. Welcome back, everyone. It's great to have you here today for the next lesson learned in leadership. This is another mentoring moment. Today's lesson is about the importance of keeping our ears open and our mouths shut. See, good leaders know the importance of developing into good listeners. I'm going to talk all about that in just a second. But first, I'm Greg Storch. I'm the owner of Lion Enterprise, host of the Weekly Roar, and the founder of a worldwide bartered coaching program called The Helping Hand. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Last week, we continued with my newest leadership series, Mentoring Moments in Leadership. And I shared a lesson about how we give ourselves the best chance at reaching our potential when we pursue the things that we're most passionate about doing. You know the old saying, do what you love doing and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's exactly what last Wednesday's Weekly Roar was all about. You see, passion can help us take action in a way that we typically wouldn't. It's the difference maker between having to do something and wanting to do it. And then afterwards, some of you took to the Lion's Den Facebook page and continued the discussion on the Conversation Corner post where you scaled your current happiness with what you're doing. And I'm happy to see that many of you rated yourselves in your strength zones. I had no doubt that anyone who was part of the Lion's Den would be way up there. The Conversation Corner is a new thing that I've added to help continue the dialogue each week following the Weekly Roar. It's its own post on the Lion's Den Facebook page that's connected to the Weekly Roar topic for that week. It allows us to continue the discussion and share perspectives with one another. Now, if you weren't able to join us last Wednesday for the Weekly Roar, or if you need to catch up or just want to watch that session over again, you can access all of my free video resources on my website at lion-enterprise.com. Click on the Lion's Pride Library menu to find video number 129 for last week. And while you're in the Lion's Pride Library, make sure you look around and stay a while. It's a free resource, and it's a great way for you to get more of the roar. All right, everyone. One last thing before I start today's session, and that is I want to just take a second to recognize our veterans on this Veterans Day. You know, less than 10% of the American population holds that title of military veteran, and those serving now, who served in the past, and who gave the ultimate sacrifice deserve recognition, acknowledgement, and our appreciation. So if you're a fellow veteran, we thank you for your service and sacrifice. Okay, let's jump right into today's topic that I'm calling Why You Should Listen More and Talk Less. I love this week's lesson learned in leadership. It kind of makes me laugh when I speak about being a good listener because, well, actually, I think it makes my wife laugh more than I do. I don't think my wife would mention my name when it comes to making a list of great listeners. And I know it's an area where I need to do better. The thing is, in general, people just really don't listen well. They're either not that interested in what you're saying, or they're too focused on their own agenda. It's ridiculous to see two people acting like they can't really hear each other by choice. If you really want to listen effectively, then I advise you to listen past where the other person has finished. Does that make sense? We should take a pause before answering them. Let them get their point, their story, their compliment, or whatever, their criticism. Let them get that out completely. Then, before preparing your response, ask more about what they said so you can really get engaged and better understand their what and why. Being a great listener makes a huge difference for leaders, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Human beings have been programmed to disengage from the person doing the talking so they can begin to formulate their response. Listening to understand instead of respond is exactly what I'm talking about. Hear what I'm saying? See what I did there? And when it comes to leadership, well, I think it's hard for leaders because we're supposed to lead the charge, develop the plan, and share the vision. All of that translates in our brains to doing a lot of talking. As a matter of fact, some leaders think that's the way it should be: more talk and less listening. But what I've come to learn is that it's much better for us to listen first and do the talking later. As a matter of fact, this is another place in leadership where the Pareto principle applies. We should spend 80% of our time listening and 20% of it speaking, not the other way around. Stephen Covey actually refers to this as his fifth habit in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think it's critical to becoming effective listeners. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. You know, if I asked you to share some of the characteristics that you think make a great leader, I imagine that some of you would probably tell me things like visionary, strategic thinking, the ability to inspire and motivate others, or someone with the passion and drive to achieve. But I'd be willing to bet that maybe not all, but many of you might forget to add that one trait that truly sets great leaders apart, and that's their ability to listen. If you take a little time to think about it, it's not really rocket science. All you have to do is just take a second and think about how you feel when you know that someone you're talking to is really listening to you. It feels good, right? See, the simple act of listening to people in your organization will give you a ground up view of everything that's happening around you. You can obtain valuable information about how they think and feel about key issues going on in the organization. And wouldn't that come in handy when it's time for decision making? I really believe that listening is a leadership responsibility, and it isn't going to appear in your job description. While it isn't a hard thing to do, it does require a commitment to get good at doing it right. At the end of the day, effective listeners are better leaders. And I want to share a few reasons why I believe that's true. In order to lead others, we have to be able to understand them first. How do you do that? Well, listening, of course. Most people listen with the intent to reply in the front of their mind, but true leaders know that in order to empathize and connect with others, they have to first understand them. And that understanding comes from good listening. Before leaders can ask for people to follow them, they have to make a connection with them. You do that by listening to what they have to say. Know what their hopes and dreams are, and you can understand them when you ask questions and truly listen to their answers. My mentor, John Maxwell, always says that when it comes to leading people effectively, you have to touch their hearts before you ask for a hand. Not only is it unfair to ask for help from someone with whom you haven't connected with, it's really not very effective. Remember, To have the right effect, you're going to have to connect. Another way we become better leaders through effective listening is because listening really is one of the best ways for us to learn. Some of the best leaders I know are also some of the most skilled at listening, and they understand that they can learn more by being good at it. You see, in most conversations, people simply react to the latest comment, but the best leaders are listening to learn. They don't track the conversations as a back and forth so much as a path to receive new information. Listening, learning, and putting into practice what you've learned will always be the best way to build success. You ever wonder why God gave us only one mouth but two ears? Think about it. When we aren't listening, we're not learning. Think of it this way. Sometimes leaders need to take on more of a student role than a teacher role. And when we're the student, we have to listen if we want to be sure to learn. Here's another one for you. Listening can keep small issues from becoming big problems. Effective leaders allow others to tell them what they need to hear and not necessarily what they want to hear. There's an old Indian proverb that says, "Listen to the whispers and you won't have to hear the screams." I love that. Good leaders tune into the small stuff. They listen to not only what others are saying, but they also tune into what's not being said. In order to do that, you have to have good listening skills because it requires us to have a good understanding of people. And one more thing about this to remember: to help position yourself for success, be secure enough in your role and with who you are that you'll be able to hear the whispers. In other words, check your ego. You have to be willing to not only hear things that you may not want to hear, but you want people to be able to trust you enough to actually say it. Now, probably one of the biggest things that I personally believe about how listening makes us better leaders is that it also helps us to build trust with others. And trust is the foundation upon which we build leadership. Effective leaders are always good communicators, and that doesn't mean just being a good talker. People want to be listened to. They want to be respected and understood. So it's a big mistake for leaders to spend their time ensuring they express their own ideas and feelings. When others plainly see that they're being understood, it motivates them to understand our point of view. And as leaders, that's an invaluable gift of trust. For those of you who work with other companies, just think about how good you feel when you believe your leaders are listening to you. When they hear your ideas and concerns and then they actually act on them. It does a lot towards building trust in them, doesn't it? On the other hand, when that doesn't happen, it's easy to see how it can really damage the relationship and lead to mistrust. If you want to remain a leader and be an effective one at that, remember that when followers no longer feel like you're listening to them, they'll go find a real leader who will. And if you don't have followers, you aren't really leading, are you? That's why listening, really listening to your people, is so critical in so many ways. Okay, so those were just a few points I wanted to make about how we can become better leaders by becoming better listeners. First, we have to understand others before we can lead them, and we do that by listening to them. Second is to realize that we can learn when we listen. The third thing was that listening helps us keep the small issues from becoming big problems. And then that last one I just mentioned was that it's a great way for us to build trust with others. And we have to establish trust if we want to lead. So, after hearing some of the reasons how better listeners make us better leaders, if you want to work on becoming a better listener, I'm going to give you a few suggestions for you to help you get better at it. Okay? First of all, you have to make yourself available to others. See, a lot of leaders shy away from emotional interactions, but good leaders know how to make themselves approachable, and they show empathy when their employees are in need of attention. Whenever we position ourselves like that for our people, they'll be more comfortable speaking to us. And when they talk, we listen. Another thing is to ensure you are creating a culture where people feel empowered to speak up and share their opinions. And when they do, make sure not to judge or criticize when they share their different ways of approaching problems or solving them. Now, I've always been told this third thing that I want to share, and I'm actually known for doing it, but some people I know struggle with it for some reason. Luckily, I've never been one of them. Here's what it is. Whenever someone is speaking to you, make eye contact with them. You don't want to be looking around at every other thing like this while the person's talking. Keeping your eyes on them allows you to have a better awareness around not only what's being said, but how it's being said. Now, the last tip I'll share is to stop focusing on preparing a response while the other person is still speaking. I promise you that if you just listen to what the person is saying, your response will come naturally. There's no reason for you to get prepared in your response. Just be compassionate by not interrupting the flow of the conversation. When leaders exercise their patience in listening, they easily gain respect from others. Let's be honest. If I honor you with my ears, you'll be more likely to reciprocate. Others learn the habit through our example. So if you want to be a better leader, a better parent, a better spouse, even a better friend, then be a better listener. Avoid the habit of delivering this collective monologue by really listening with the intent of understanding, appreciating, and affirming those you're listening to. By becoming a great listener, you will be well on your way to becoming an effective leader who knows how to bring out the best in others. And we can't get the best out of others if we don't know things about them, like who they are, where they come from, where they want to go, and how they think and what they can contribute to the team. We only learn those things by listening to them. Remember, the ability to hear is a gift. The willingness to listen is a choice. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for today. And I want to remind you to go back into the Lion's Den page and keep this dialogue going in the Conversation Corner post. Go back there and see what the question is for this week. If you want to keep running to the roar, then join me next week as I share another lesson learned in leadership. This next lesson learned is going to help us all find our superpower. And once we do, we're going to want to start using it. If you want to hear more about identifying the areas where you tend to be the strongest and why you want to, then just come on back to the Lion's Den next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks, everybody, for supporting me and watching the Weekly Roar today. I appreciate you. I love the dialogue going over here in the comments. And until we meet again next Wednesday, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.